Hello and welcome back to Thrifted Lifestyle. Today I am making my own mushroom sweater because these mushroom sweaters are all over the internet and I am obsessed. However, most of them are amanitas and not various mushrooms like these sweaters, so I went ahead and decided to do a little bit of a variety instead of just sticking to the standard amanitas. So I went ahead and I found a cardboard box and I cut out my different types of mushrooms that I wanted. Being a Vermonter and a forager, I really wanted to stick to mushrooms that I've either seen in person and foraged, or I know, like, I've never foraged a morel, which is one of my goals as a forager, but I did put them on there because I'm a Vermonter and they are popular in Vermont. So first I went ahead with some cardboard and I created my little mushrooms, and then I found some scrap fleece that I was laying around, and I'm picking through the colors that I have, and I am going ahead and creating a bunch of different types of mushrooms. It was surprisingly easy to cut these all out and get them the correct shape that I wanted. I'm really familiar with these mushrooms in person, so I think that helped. But also, fleece is awesome. I love that it doesn't shred and that you don't need to finish it. And it was super time consuming, but a lot of fun to create these little mushrooms. So here I am in the back of my dad's new truck, and we are on our way to Florida. So what better way to pacify the time than to get crafty and make my mushroom sweater. So this sweater actually, I believe is from the 80s. It was given to me. It's super comfy, and I love the color of navy and the yellow cuffs and around the collar and things. Like, I just think it's a really nice sweater. And however, it did have like a print on the front of it, so I am using my chanterelle type looking mushrooms to carefully cover those pieces so I don't have to pick them off and ruin the actual sweater. So I took a lot of time assembling these mushrooms and just making sure that they were hand stitched in a nice way that was sturdy and looked as true to the real thing as I possibly could. So with a lot of pins and a lot of thread and needle, I sat there and stitched each individual mushroom, first to itself like I am right here with this morel, and then actually onto the sweater itself. This process, I'd say probably took me about 8 hours total. Obviously, I took some breaks and moved on to some other things and took a nap, but other than that, like, this was about an 8-hour process. So I'm just gonna finish up this morel here and then move on to my amanitas and continue working very diligently and patiently on hand stitching all of these mushrooms onto my sweater. For this project, I tried to keep it pretty simple and just use black and white thread when I could instead of having a bunch of colors. But if you do have all the colors and you're planning on making one yourself, it is nice to use red thread when you are, working on a red mushroom or something like that. But I definitely used a lot of white and black, and then I did have a beige for the morels just because that's what's in my basic sewing kit too, is a beige. And I only brought a little teeny sewing kit with me on this trip. Obviously, I didn't want to have a lot in the car, and so yeah. Just to talk about this mushroom real quick, actually, this is an amanita, but actually the one I'm working on right now is an Amanita jacksoni, which I actually saw for the first time in real life last summer. It was July, and I was in New Hampshire, and they are the neatest mushrooms I've ever seen, and they're actually one of the very few mushrooms that you can eat raw in nature. Like, that's, usually you have to cook mushrooms when you know that they're not poisonous. So obviously, here's my little PSA. Please don't eat mushrooms that you don't know. I am a forager, and this is something that I love to do, and I've been studying it a lot. And so I take all the precautions. But anyways, the first one I was just working on, this is the amanita that is poisonous, so you would never want to eat the amanita that has white spots on it. But there is one that comes, the jacksoni, that is actually in a little pod, and that's the ones that are on the left there that I'm touching right now. And they kind of look like a little dinosaur egg. And They're definitely a mushroom you should keep your eye out when you're out in the wild, just so you can see it. It's beautiful looking and it is tasty, but again, don't eat it unless you know what you're doing. So after my little mini break of lovely family time and just watching the climate get warmer and warmer outside, I am back to pinning and stitching my mushrooms onto my sweater. There was a quick moment where I thought I might just load this sweater with a ton of mushrooms. And I may eventually create something with more mushrooms on it, but for this sweater, I just really wanted to keep it simple, and maybe I'm gonna like continue to add mushrooms on as I find them and or I figure out how to make a fleece version of them, because it was really challenging for some of them, but some of them also, again, were super easy. So yeah, I'm going to keep it simple for now and just sew on the ones that I have, and then, like I said, maybe add more on later. So here I am again. I'm just using a loop stitch and trying to keep the stitches small so that you don't really see it in the fleece, because when you stitch pretty small, fleece kind of eats the thread, and it kind of has a nice look to it instead of it just being over the top. I definitely liked that I hand stitched this versus a machine. I also think that gave me a lot of control over where they went and the positioning and style of them. So yeah, here I am, still a working. Like I said, 8 hours continuously. Well, if I had continuously went, but obviously I took breaks because this is vacation. And can we just like take a side note and see how aesthetically pleasing it is to have my nails the same color, or a very complementary color to the yellow mushroom, chanterelle mushrooms I made. But also I wanted to mention that, like, yes, the other ones are super cool, and I like that I cut them out of, you know, the fleece pieces, but like I'm extra impressed or happy at myself for seeing the elephant fleece and cutting out the feet and the hands, because it had a really nice like texture, like a polka dot texture to this fabric. I know that chanterelles are not polka dot, but they don't look too bold, and I like that it gives a little extra texture to them. They're probably my favorite ones, obviously minus the Jacksoni, because those mushrooms are just so tasty. Onto the most sought after mushroom, my morels. Like I mentioned, I have not found them yet. Like, I've seen my friends and other forager people find them, and I live in Vermont, but I haven't been able to find them yet. So for now, I just have my little felt versions. My sweater is done. She's beautiful. My fingers are bleeding. It fits well. It's comfy. It's unique. Nobody else has it. And if you like these kind of videos, be sure to hit subscribe and visit thriftyboutique.com.